Tonight on Huckabee.
This single program represents the biggest threat to consumer choice and freedom that this country has ever seen.
The administration putting the squeeze on businesses in Operation Choke Point.
You've been in business a while, and now all of a sudden the federal government comes in and says, we just don't like what you do.
That's what happened.
And the IRS trying to intimidate pastors for preaching politics. Church leaders are calling their bluff.
I always call them back or write back and say, thank you for encouraging me. I'm going to be more bold this year.
Plus,
that's not an answer.
Richard Dreyfuss and Dinesh D'Souza face off on immigration, politics, and American history. Ladies and gentlemen, Governor Mike Huckabee.
Thank you. And welcome to Huckabee from the Fox News studios in New York City. This is Labor Day weekend. And Labor Day has a history that dates all the way back to the 1800s that honor those who toiled to build the country into the industrial power that we became. Labor unions were formed in those days as an important tool in protecting workers from being exploited and endangered. Now, it's easy for free market conservatives to have contempt for modern labor unions because of unreasonable demands for pay hikes or benefits that would make a company unprofitable. But every American should have some appreciation for the important contribution of the trade unions of a century ago. Worker safety, reasonable hours, decent pay. That was instrumental in establishing a labor force that worked hard and made their employers profitable. America's prosperity and world leader status was the result of shared benefits between labor and management. A worker appreciated is a worker motivated. And those leaders who value their employees and see them as critical to the success of the company, those are wise people. Good customer service is usually the reflection of good employee care. Employees who enjoy their work are contagious and happy employees who are usually taking care of happy customers. Publix supermarkets are strong in the South and Southeast, and I love shopping there because employees act like they're truly grateful for their customers. It's a customer-focused culture, and Publix stores are employee-owned. So the better the store does, the better the employee does. A few years ago, Delta Airlines was in bankruptcy, struggling to be profitable. Their passenger satisfaction level was abysmal. Then new leadership came in with a different attitude toward employees, and a recent passenger survey rated Delta as #1 in passenger satisfaction among airlines. You see, management realized that having an adversarial relationship with the people who actually meet the customer and are the face of the airline was just not good business. Stockholders do better, management does better, the employees do better, and most importantly, the customer gets a better experience. Recruiting good employees and then training them, treating them well, and giving them a stake in the outcome is just good business. When labor and management are partners in the success of the outcome, everyone wins. Instead of strikes and work slowdowns, alternatives like binding arbitration make a lot more sense. I agree with fellow conservatives that we need to value the job creators, but we also need to value the job holders. People who create the work usually do take big risk. And yes, they deserve big rewards. But people who do the work, they deserve to be regarded as well. A guy by the name of Frank Stronach is the Austrian-born founder of a multinational company called Magna International. They make components for the auto industry. He grew up poor, but he's now a billionaire. He built his company on the concept of fair market enterprise. It's free enterprise, but with the added caveat of treating his employees fairly and returning 10% of the profits of the company back to them. You see, having a job is a gift from a good economy and from an entrepreneur who created the job. Having a good job is a gift from God. And if you're the owner or manager, treat your labor as a valued commodity. If you're a worker, treat management as your partner in prosperity. Now, if you want to work but are unemployed in this tough economy, be patient, retrain, and don't give up. If you're a slacker, then get a job. But please, don't go to work for a good company. Go to one that's already declining, and then you can go down together. Earlier this year, the Justice Department announced a program to crack down on the businesses that the Obama administration just doesn't like. The mission is nicknamed Operation Choke Point. The goal is to make it really difficult for businesses deemed high risk to have a bank account. Businesses such as pawn shops or lending stores, coin dealers, sellers of pharmaceutical drugs. Brian Brookman is the owner of a pawn shop in Michigan. His bank closed his business account 2 weeks after it was opened. Sandra Perry owns Cash Express in Mesquite, Nevada. She says she got turned down by 3 banks and 2 credit unions because her company was too high risk. I spoke to these 2 business owners and to Brian Wise of the U.S. Consumer Coalition earlier. Sandra, let me start with you because you were told that your business was high risk. Did they tell you what exactly that meant?
Well, they really didn't explain exactly what that meant. Other words, but I have talked to some bankers. They said they just can't meet the compliance that is required to deal with a company such as my company in the money service business.
So you're not a deadbeat. You haven't had a long history of failing to pay your bills. You don't have a lot of delinquent loans out there.
We have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, and also I've never had a complaint filed against a company since I opened in 1997.
So you've been in business a while, and now all of a sudden the federal government comes in and says, we just don't like what you do.
That's what happened.
You know, I don't think most of us even know that it's possible for the federal government to decide it doesn't like a legal business. You're not running a drug ring. No. You're not doing anything illegal. You're not, you know, going out and busting people's heads with baseball bats. So I assume that everything you do is kind of on the up and up, or you'd be in jail.
We're highly regulated, and we're audited every year. That costs thousands of dollars to pay for that audit, just to make sure that we are doing everything legally and according to regulation.
Now, Brian, you have a pawn shop in Michigan, and I mean, my gosh, I've shopped at pawn shops for guitars and cameras for years and years. I didn't know it was a high-risk business for the consumer. What did they tell you when they came after you?
Well, they didn't give me any explanation at all. I just got a letter from Chase saying, oh, by the way, that account you opened 2 weeks ago, we're going to close that. No explanation. The bank manager had no idea why. I took her the letter, and she came back to me a couple days later and said, I can't find anything out either.
So even the bank was not aware of why you were being targeted?
No, sir. No idea. And this is a pawn shop in a small, upscale, classy community right downtown in a business district that attracts thousands of tourists every year. I mean, I'm just every bit the average guy, you know, trying to carve out my piece of the American pie and support my family. I don't break any laws. I haven't done anything to draw any attention.
What does it do to your business if they say you can't have an account, a bank account?
Well, no business can operate without a bank. I have to be able to pay bills. I have to be able to process credit card payments when people buy things from me. You know, nobody really uses cash these days.
Nobody has any cash, Brian, that's why.
So it's, yeah,
that's why they're using the credit cards. It's like the only thing we have right now. Sherry, same thing for you. What happens to your business if the bank says no can do?
Well, it would be very difficult to run our business without a bank. It would just be near impossible. Even our third payment processors, they're having problems too because of their clients. They're losing their bank accounts. Of course, it's a big snowball effect. So what? They've lost business. And it's just, I see it being such a big snowball effect. And I wish, really, I'm from Nevada. Harry Reid is our senator there.
Oh, how lucky you must feel.
Well, possibly he's done some good things. He has supported gun ownership. He has supported the pawn industry and also the short-term lending. But where is he right now? We need him right now to stop this Operation Choke Point.
Well, have you talked to his office? And if you have, what kind of response do you get from?
I've been waiting after I was on the show. I thought I might have a little more clout.
Of course, after my catty remark, you'll have to say that you defended him. By the way, I think I said Sherry, Sandra. Brian Wise, you're with the U.S. Consumer Council, and I want to ask you about how this is affecting businesses. When we ask the federal government about this, they say, oh, it's just a misunderstanding. That's all it is. Do you buy that?
No, in fact, I think that was part of their plan all along. This single program represents the biggest threat to consumer choice and freedom that this country has ever seen. The fact that the government can pick and choose winners and losers simply based on their political ideology is a threat to the American dream. I mean, these are small business owners that they have done everything right. They've followed all of the rules, and yet because the administration seems to not like their industry, and it's not just their industries, it's gun dealers and ammunition sales, it's pharmaceutical sales, it's multi-level marketing, so your Amway and Cutco knives and other businesses like that are all being affected. And so this is a threat to the American dream. And you know, we know of a little more than 100 businesses right now that have been affected, but we know that there are probably thousands more that just don't realize that because they lost their bank account earlier this year that it was due to Operation Choke Point.
See, I can see the federal government, who doesn't really, this federal government anyway, this current administration, doesn't care for firearms and wishes they could get rid of them. They'll never pass that in Congress. But if they can just get the Justice Department to say to a gun store, this guy can't have a bank account, he is out of business. Well,
that's really the genius of this program and what makes it so dangerous. The genius of this program is that they never went to Congress. These are all businesses that they have tried to legislate out of existence for the past 10, 20 years. But because they couldn't do that, they decided that they were going to end-run Congress and use the president's year of action, as he's talked about, to double down on this effort. And what we see, you know, just last month, the FDIC removed a list of high-risk merchants. That list of merchants was about 24 different merchants that they had identified as being, you know, ripe for consumer fraud. Well, what that was not a backing off of this program. That was a doubling down of this program. That was them taking any kind of certainty that the banks had, taking that away, so that now the banks have to be the morality police.
Sandra, do you know of other businesses in your community that have been targeted like you have?
I really don't know. I do know that a lot of businesses are not aware of what is going on, because I've called some businesses, even some gun shop owners. I do know what Brian was speaking of. Basically what happened, I called the banks that turned me down after I learned the FDIC had pulled the list. I still didn't have any luck. It didn't make any difference to them.
And Brian, what about you? Same thing? You have other businesses in your community that have been targeted like this?
None that I'm aware of, sir, but it's important to remember that my business, Pawn Shops, wasn't even on the list. The only thing I do that was on the list is I deal in antique currency, old vintage coins and things that people collect. Somehow that's considered high risk. I don't understand why, but I would just like to see the Attorney General come into my store and see my customers and my store and where it's at and what we do and meet me, and then tell me to my face, well, you're high risk, I need to put you out of business.
You know what, even if you're high risk, so what? That's American enterprise. So what? If you don't make it, you don't make it. But it's your decision to go into business, and it's not the federal government's decision to say, I think this guy will make it and this guy won't. My gosh, Apple's computer would never have existed if the government had looked at Steve Jobs in his garage and said, this guy ain't going to make it. I mean, I'm just outraged by it. Look, I really appreciate you being here, and here's what I want to ask. If you're a business owner that's been targeted by this law, or by this rule, it's not even a law, and if you've been targeted by the Operation Choke Point, I want you to let us know. Contact us on our Facebook page, Huckabee Show, because we want to hear from you. We want to keep following this story. I think it is an important one. I'll be honest with you, I've not heard anything about it. People need to know about it, and we're going to help make sure they do. Well, the IRS is trying to keep him and other pastors from discussing politics from the pulpit, but he says he's going to keep doing it anyway. And he tells the federal government to keep out of his church. We'll have that story when we come back.